Hey everyone, Shane here with etrailer.com. Today I have a 2020 Honda Pioneer 1000-5 and I want to walk through how to install etrailer.com's 5,000 pound winch. 5,000 pound winch is going to be great for your ATVs and UTVs. They're going to be used mainly to help you get out of a sticky situation, or maybe you're out running around in the field or out in the mud holes in the backwoods and somebody else gets stuck. You can be there to help them get out of a situation also. Something to keep in mind, this winch, it's going to be preferred that it's used with a 12-volt battery. It's going to have a 5,000 pound straight line pull. Keep in mind that's something that is rolling, that is not drag weight. This unit is going to have a power draw of 30 amps when not used. However, when it is being used, when pulling 5,000 pounds, that number is going to jump up to 296. It is going to have a free spool option. It's going to be located right on the end of the winch. You're simply going to spin it to free. It allows you to grab your rope, pull it out to get it to the tree or whatever you may be hooking up to. It's going to come with a Haas fair lead, aluminum construction, so it works great for your synthetic ropes. Our rope is going to be 50 foot long, so it's going to give us plenty of length to either hook up to that tree or hook up to our buddy that may be a little bit farther away from us. When we compare it to the wire cables tend to rust over time and also tend to splinter. So in my opinion, the synthetic rope is going to be the way to go. Another nice feature is it's going to have a sleeve on it. It's going to be a nylon sleeve. It's going to be similar to a seatbelt material. Feels about as thick. And what this is going to do is it's going to protect your line when you're around a tree. It's also going to protect the tree. Now, it's always recommended when you are either pulling someone else out or pulling yourself out to use a line brake. And what that is to do is that if the line happens to snap, the line is going to come back, go through the windshield, hurt you or anybody else in your vehicle. It's also going to come with a 10-foot controller cable. So we simply hook it up wherever we have our plug mounted. And it gives us the ability to stand away from the vehicle and allow the winch to do the work without us being inside of it. It really doesn't make a whole lot of noise. It's really not loud like some of the other ones out there. The unit's also going to have a brake in it. So as we're pulling in and we stop, it's not going to allow it to unwind at all. It's going to stop right where you stop. It's also going to come with a very nice large size hook and a pull strap. Pull strap is designed so that when you're free spooling, you're pulling this out to hook it up to something, you can grab it by the strap, you're not grabbing it by the rope. As far as the installation, this winch is going to require the Bulldog winch mount plate, steel construction, black powder coat finish. It's going to line up directly with the holes on the winch, so it's very easy to mount. The only other thing you really have to do is 2 wires coming from the winch go to the solenoid, 2 wires coming from the battery go to the solenoid, mount your connection for your 10-foot cable or your 10-foot controller, and you're ready to go. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's walk through how to get it installed. So our installation, we're going to use a 5mm Allen head. We're going to take this bolt out. We're going to take a 14mm socket. We're going to remove that bolt. We're going to take a 12mm socket, and there's 2 bolts right here. We need to remove these 2. Once you get one side done, you're going to repeat the process on the other. What we're going to do is we're going to slide a front bumper off. You're going to kind of have to wiggle it back and forth to get it to slide out. Now we're going to take our mounting plate. This is going to be the bottom side of our bumper, the roll pan. On our plate, we're going to have tabs. These are going to go down like this, towards the bottom, and they're going to line up with these two holes in these side plates. We're going to take two of the bolts that we pulled out that are holding our bumper in. We're going to slide them in like this. We're going to use those as guide pins to align our bracket. Hex bolt, we're going to put on the flat washer. Go through like that. And we're going to put on a nylon lock nut on the other side. 1/2 inch socket and wrench. We're going to tighten up the hardware at the bottom. Once we get those tight, we can remove these two bolts. Next, we're going to mount our winch. You want to make sure that your fair lead is facing towards the hole. We're going to mount it between the bottom plate and this plate. It's going to be mounted just like this. We're going to take the longer of the bolts that come in your kit, you're going to put on a lock washer and then a flat washer. And you're going to need 4 of them. They're going to go right through the holes into the bottom feet on the winch. I'm going to take a 1/2 inch socket and we're going to tighten our bolts down. Cut your zip tie off your fair lead, and then you're going to turn the dial to free spool. That allows you to pull this out a little bit and just let it hang out. Take our fair lead guide, we're going to slide it on, and it's not going to match up with our holes. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to widen those holes just a little bit. I'm going to use a small drill bit. I'm going to drill a pilot hole. We're going to do this on both sides. I'm going to go up to a 27/64 drill bit and open it up to the correct size. Do that on both sides. I'm going to take a step bit and I'm going to clean that out. Take our grinding bit, we'll kind of clean off some of the edges. Then I'm going to take a file, I'm going to file the inside. I'm going to take a little bit of black spray paint, I'm going to spray that bare metal to help prevent any rusting later on. Then we'll mount our fair lead guide. We're going to take one of the longer bolts that come in the kit, put on a flat washer, slide it down through the hole, and on the other side, we're going to put on a flat washer, followed by a lock washer, followed by a nut. And repeat that same thing on this side. Now we'll take a 1/2 inch socket for the bolt head side, a 9/16 wrench for the nut side, and we're going to tighten them into place. Once we get it mounted, we can reinstall our front bumper onto our UTV. Once you get your bumper put back on, you can go ahead and reinstall the hardware, except for this bolt right here that holds on this plastic panel, because we need this loose so we can hook up our wiring. Now to hook up our wiring, we're going to go ahead and remove our hood. We're going to pop those up, twist them, and we're going to slide it back. Our wiring's basically going to be in this area. We're going to be hooking up our switch on the dash, because that's where our customer wanted it. We're also going to be installing a rocker switch, which is a great feature if you're putting a winch on and you don't always want to hook up the remote. What would be easy if we could go straight through the dash right here, because all this is open. However, our customer wants it on the left side of the steering wheel on the dash. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the door and we're going to move this side panel here. We're going to start with a 10mm socket. We're going to remove the 4 bolts holding our door in place. Next, we're going to take a trim panel tool. We're going to remove all the push pin fasteners that run right along the edge of this outer panel. Once you get the top ones off, we're going to have 3 right underneath. We'll have 1 here, 1 here, on here. Once you remove that panel, we have access right where we're going to be putting our switch and our controller lead. Since our customer wants this mounted right here on the inside of this panel, there's nowhere really in there to mount it so that this is close enough so you can see how short it is. So what I am doing is I'm just taking a bracket, this is just a random bracket, and I'm going to mount it with some self-tappers. You can kind of see those 2 holes right there. I'm going to mount it right there. Self-tap it right into that. I'll be able to mount this on here, and it'll be right up next to where I'm going to put my switch. You can also potentially use a no-drill mounting bracket, a short one, and cut the end of it off so that you have a way to mount that. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these holes drilled and get this, make sure it's all going to fit in place correctly, and then we'll move on to getting everything wired up and our holes drilled in our dash for these. So what I've done is I drilled the second hole next to it, and kind of opened it, made it oblong, so when I get this mounted, get this inside the dash, I can take this bracket and slide it over so it pulls this tight against the dash and it doesn't take a chance of this popping out. Now that we've got that done, we're going to have to make the hole in the dash this size. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove the wires from the connection points. What I suggest doing is just snap a picture on your phone so you know where these green and white wire and the black wire goes to. Also keep in mind, these may have little small washers on them. I'm going to use a step bit. You want to make sure you don't go oversized with it, or else this is not going to fit. So we'll just take it a little bit at a time, test it out, and take out what we need as we go. Once we get our hole to size, and take it, push it into place, just like that. After that, you can go ahead and reconnect your wires and then attach it to the plate here if you're doing it in that way. Once you get your wires reattached to your solenoid, we can start running our power wires and everything from here down to our battery to get power to it. Now the wiring side of this is going to be, it's pretty simple and straightforward. We have 4 wires we have to deal with. The blue and the yellow are going to connect to the winch, and they're marked, the posts are marked, so yellow is going to go to yellow post, blue is going to go to blue, and these need to be routed up to the solenoid. This is your ground wire. Your ground is going to go from the battery to the ground post on the solenoid, and then of course your power wire is going to go from the positive side of the battery to the positive side or the red post on the solenoid. The kit is going to come with these little boots for the end of your wires. That way it kind of covers that end. Once you get your bolts on, or your nuts on, you can slide it on, and it keeps anything from contacting it, potentially shorten it out. We'll go ahead and get our yellow wire put on. Slide on the boot first. You're going to take off the nut and then two washers, or one of the washers, and then put the wire on. Again, yellow with yellow. Put on a flat washer on top, and then the nut. We're just going to leave these loosely installed right now until we figure out how we're going to route them up to our solenoid. And to run our red wire, it's going to have two circuit breakers on it. We're running it from the positive post on the battery to the red post on the solenoid. As I mentioned before, and how I did it was I ran straight this way, right over to where my solenoid is sitting. You want to make sure that the boots that come in the kit, you put one on each end of the red wire, each end of the yellow wire, and each end of the blue wire. We're not going to hook this up to the positive side of the post just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this end and this end with some electrical tape, cover that up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie it right to that factory wire loom there. For our ground wire, negative side of the post, and I ran it the same way as I did my red wire, straight over to that corner where my solenoid is. Now, in most applications, your solenoid would typically be mounted underneath the hood so that these would be long enough to reach the solenoid. However, because they wanted it mounted in the dash, these are not going to be long enough. So if you're going to mount it the way that I did, you're going to need some 6-gauge wire. Let's say I've got about 4 foot and I cut it in half. I'm going to add 2 foot of it. I'm going to cut this wire in the middle, and I use number 6 copper butt connectors, and then we're going to put a heat shrink tube on it, and then once we make the connection onto our cable, we'll put the heat shrink bucket or sleeve on there, and we'll put some heat shrink around that and then wrap it with a little bit of tape, and then throw some wire loom on it, and we'll get our wires ran up to our solenoid. Take this, cut it in half. Get these stripped back. We'll slide it on. Now you can rent a crimp connector, a larger one, that's really designed for putting these on because they can be kind of stiff, but I am able to get them crimped on there. So put one on each end of your extension. Heat shrink sleeve, it's going to look like this. We're going to cut it in half. We'll slide it on. We're going to take our yellow wire. Something like that. Take our heat source. You just made yourself a longer cable. I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape. I'm going to go around each one of these. I don't have to do a lot, just one. Get our boot sawed on. And then we're going to do the same thing with the blue wire. Once these are connected, 10mm socket's going to tighten the nut. Wire loom is not going to come in your kit. However, you can find it here at eTrailer. I like to use it because it kind of hides the color of the wire, kind of blends in with the rest of the components under the engine. You want to make sure when running it, you stay away from anything hot or moving. We have our A-arm here. I went over the top. I actually zip tied it right to this support beam here on our frame. Went underneath this brake line. Brake line runs over here, went straight up. Zip tied right here around this frame piece here. Went straight up. Zip tied it to some factory wiring right there. And then that's all open over to the solenoid. Connect your ground wire to the black post. Positive wire coming from the battery to the red post. Blue wire to the blue post. Yellow wire to the yellow post. Take a 10mm socket and you can tighten it down. Make sure you're not over tightening these. You don't need to crank on them. Just want to make sure they're holding on there where they're not going to spin around and cause a nut to fall off. Once you get them tight, slide your boots over the top, add a little protection, and then we can take the rest for a wire, kind of bundle it up. We have a few different places up in here we can do it. There's a frame rail that runs right across here for our dash. We can take all this and zip tie it right up there. Once we have everything else connected and tightened down, go ahead and make our connection to the positive post on the battery. One thing I will say is there's a small nut underneath of this, and this bolt is not that long. If you pull this all the way out right away without getting something in there to hold that nut up, this nut, or this bolt, when you put that on, is not going to reach the nut. So what I have is a pick. What I did is I put electrical tape on this metal end. The only thing that I'm going to be touching with is that end, so that if anything touches, then I don't have to worry about it sparking. So what I'm doing is I'm holding up the nut. When I pull this out, take my positive, get that tightened back down. And this already has a sleeve, but we're going to go ahead and try and get this boot on there best we can. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this right here. Last thing we're going to do, we need to put our hook on to our rope, pull the cotter pin out, pull this pin out, and slide it over like that. Slide the pin through, reinstall the cotter pin. From there, take your strap, cut on just like that. Now we're going to hook up our switch here and test it out. And back in. Now you know it's working correctly. Go ahead and put your panels back in place and you're ready to go. It's going to do it for look at and installation on the etrailer.com 5,000 pound winch.